Sahana bhavatu, Sahanau bhunaktu, Saha Viryam Karavavahi, Tejasvinavaditam Astuma Vidvishavai. Om Shanti, Shanti, Shanti. May that one protect us both. May that one nourish us both. May we work together with great energy. May our study be illumined. May we not unnecessarily cavil with each other. Peace, peace, peace be unto all. So this is the Vedanta Series Question and Answers. The reason why we have these series is so that instead of delivering a lecture that you may or may not want, you can get to the nub of some issues that are troubling you, either to do with principle or practice of the Vedanta philosophy. And the first question we could always ask is, so what is Vedanta philosophy? I'm assuming all of you know it. But I'm going to mute my microphone so you have a chance to formulate a question.
Good morning, Swami. My question was could you explain what do we must we understand by Vedanta? What is Vedanta? It's my question. It was my question, and so please, could you give us your explanation? What means this word for you? Thank you.
Okay, thank you. Yes. See, we every Sunday morning we have this series, Vedanta Question and Answer series, assuming everybody knows what we mean by Vedanta, and perhaps people don't. And since we are a Vedanta society dedicated to the propagation of the Vedanta philosophy, we should probably go to the grassroots and explain what do we mean by this Vedanta. Well, Vedanta is a combination of two words, Veda and Anta. Veda comes from a Sanskrit root. All Sanskrit words have a root from which everything else is derived. And the word Veda comes from the root vid, to know and to see. Every time you put a video camera on and say this is a video, you're actually giving the variation or the derivation from this word. So vid means to see, to know. When we see something, we know it for ourselves. Empirical knowledge is knowledge. And even if you say metaphorically we can see, that is also knowledge. So we take for granted what we see is what we know. Anta is the end, the finality of it. So the word Vedanta is used in a number of different senses. Firstly, if there is anything to know, we can identify two varieties of knowledge. One variety of knowledge will be the landscape of our normal experience. And we can only get that experience through instrumentations or organs. Organs and the mind and the intention has to be a part and parcel of it. It is the interpretive function of what we see. What we see is what we know. Our world. Is it correct? Well, now that's up for debate. The human brain, as well known, has two hemispheres, and this is now being studied widely by neurologists and neuroscience, with two seemingly different functions. One side of the brain is emphasizing the minutiae. It's delivered to us for survival, essentially, that we can pay attention to details while being aware of the overview is an essential part of our biological human makeup. So we have a left side of the brain and we have a right side of the brain, and the right side of the brain is called Gestalt, to do with creativity. And when that is sophisticated, we can see it in art, in culture, in imagination, in creativity, in flexibility. But the other side of the brain is a left-sided brain, which is more to do with detail, with logic, with structure, with relating to mechanisms about how things work and so on. You get the general idea. And these two sides of the brain have to work. modern society has emphasized the one side of the brain increasingly, so that truth or reality for us becomes more of an abstraction, a representation. Is more to do with virtual reality than actual reality. It's more to do with, you know, uh, numbers and data and concepts which are basically uh, technical in their outlook. So, is it that we have become predominantly left sided people? And there's a consensus that yes, that's our problem. Even when children are brought up, if you want to know how to use a computer or a computer program, or a child of 5 will tell you. They're adept at manipulating mobile phones and all kinds of technology. It's the world that they've been brought up in, and that makes them much more out of touch with reality as presented by the senses in the world. So Vedanta says, okay, there is something to be known beyond this relative or abstract world, beyond the mind and so on, because there must be. Why must there be? And why should it be there? And how do people come up with these ideas and discoveries? Our discoveries currently are to do with trying to understand what the world is like from the point of view of eyes and ears and so on, and from the point of view of how we interpret things. And as we say, that has shifted and changed over years because of technology. And maybe we have lost our right brain gestalt creativity as a result, either partially or completely. In which case, we have to get this back. Now, I'll explain why that's important. And it's important in discovering another side of this truth. The world is true when reported by the senses, but it's not permanent and doesn't give any fundamental answers to fundamental questions. Who am I? What's the meaning and purpose of life? Where are we going? Why are we going there? These are important, profound questions that have been asked for eons and eons and eons. And so, in the ancient world, in what we currently call subcontinent of India, Pakistan, that general region, probably extending as far to current day Iran and Burma and all these countries that are now geographically divided, one region was there where people sat down and thought. It's not the first time, but it's probably on record the most ancient record of people sitting down and saying, you know what, we have to find out where we are. We have to find out what this is all about. And we can't find any answers in a changing world. So a technical term was brought out to explain this changing universe, and it was called Jagat, the thing that always changes. And if the thing that always changes, as soon as I look at it, it ceases to become a discovery, it shifts, it changes into something else. I don't find any satisfactory fundamental answers to these questions. And to go along with it, just living from day to day in survival mode, I don't find any satisfaction in that. And the more sophisticated I get, the more of an inquiring mind I have, because all of the answers to these questions are really all of a superficial nature, temporary nature. And if I just give up on it and live my life without this inquiry, then the most profound discovery of our own nature will escape us. So we have to make an inquiry. Now, the Kathopanishad tells us generally the outlook is that we are gaining all our information from the outside world through the windows of the senses, openings. But some people who decided, let me think about this more carefully, turned inward. And when you turn inward, the process of interpretation is what is being explored, and we call this psychology. We want to know how we came to a conclusion about the world, and there are some undefinable things. You can't say the reality is only the things that we touch and taste and see, because what about love? Love you can't touch, you can't taste, you can't see. What about affection? What about a sense of aestheticism, a sense of beauty, culture? What about sadness? What about happiness? You can't measure all of these things. You can't put a moment of joy in a container and bottle it and put it in the fridge so that when you're sad, you bring it out the next day. It's not possible. So there's a whole invisible operational world internally, and it's worth understanding. But then that leads you to a further inference. If you're looking at the comings and goings within the mind, there must be an onlooker somewhere that is not coming and is not going. From a logical point of view, that's understood. Now, how do we access this? We access it in the principle of logic as a fundamental first step, but we have to engage the right side of the brain. And the right side of the brain will then bring up the very things we're examining, such as a sense of beauty, a sense of love, a sense of harmony, and lead us in our inquiry to a real experience, an ontological experience of I am this. In answer to the question, who am I? What am I? It's an important question. So these old sages that we call rishis did this exploratory work, looking inside, and came to an aha moment that they all discovered in common. And today we can register the commonality of it because everybody who made this internal inquiry, this internal pilgrimage, came to the same aha moment. That's it. That's who I am. I am that. I'm what? Well, I am that self, that Atman. I am that datum beyond which I cannot go. And I am a witness of everything. I'm a knower of everything. Now, today, one of the key questions that has not been solved by science is consciousness. What is consciousness? Now, what do we mean by consciousness? Well, attention and awareness, we understand we all have this. But if you are simply taking the world in a mechanical, in a reductionist way, looking at the component parts and bringing it down to its most reduced essence, and you don't have any idea of anything beyond material life, in other words, beyond what is seen externally, you will come to this conclusion, unwarranted conclusion. Consciousness is a product, is a kind of neurological product, an epiphenomenon of the brain. Don't ask me how the mechanism arrives. My axiom is there can be nothing beyond material existence. And then you still have the problem, because the examination of consciousness is answer to a question, whatever statement I make, whatever position I have, who knows it? What is the knower of it? And so these ancient rishis managed to go back and got this aha moment. How so? By engaging the Gestalt side of the brain, by making an inquiry that was compatible with an aha moment that registers this is true, and going inward and inward and inward and inward to more and more increasingly subtle areas until they come to an aha moment of pure being. And that whole process is called meditation. So meditation is a way of accessing that. Now, today, a lot of people say, oh, I meditate. But it's not meditation in this sense. Because if you ask a person, why do you meditate? People may say, oh, for health or peace of mind or whatever it is. But the person who says, I'm meditating in order to create a condition for this aha revelation moment, these people will have understood this process I'm describing and discussing. So these ancient seers, Rishi means a seer, these seers were the seer of a truth that we call Veda, because they saw it, they knew it, they had this empirical experience of the actuality of pure being. And that means that they also understood the changing world, this Jagat. Because once they discovered this inward, most subtle residual truth, all the other things disappeared. And so they were able to declare some fundamental truths. What was it? Firstly, there's only one existence. Secondly, we can say everybody who goes through this process gets the same aha moment. Everybody who goes through the same process comes to the same conclusion of oneness. Now, the other thing, of course, so what is discovered in me is a fundamental oneness, and we may say it's oneness everywhere if we introduce terms such as time and space. And oneness can be described in two ways. You can say the summary of manyness is oneness. Many things comprise a oneness. And you can say oneness holds many things. So the manyness of things, how do you explain this? How do you explain the phenomena that we experience as another kind of truth, a relative truth, a thing that changes? Well, you have to explain it through a mechanism called apparitional causation. Technical term is vivarta. Now, do you discover it in one jump, all of this? No. You have to do it through careful examination. You have to do it by seeking the advice and counsel of those people who went before you, and their experience is what we call scripture. So Vedanta is also used in the sense of scripture that defines this or that lays this experience out, not only the logical steps of it, but from different points of view because of its subtlety, and encourages you to go through a process of clarification and purification of the mind whereby you yourself see it. Why is that necessary? It's necessary because that's what's in the way. That's why you can't see it. You can't see it because the mind, the avenue through which you see, the instrument of seeing, is in the way. It only delivers you with an interpretation. It only delivers with what is seen, not what is beyond what is being seen. And so there has to be a systematic process by which you discover this. Now, that process is called yoga. That means that we understand that things are disunited, fragmented. When you unite everything, when everything becomes harmonized, everything becomes united, and this unity of existence is discovered. So Vedanta lays out the principle, but it also tells you this is how you do it. These are the disciplinary measures that you follow. This is how you cultivate a seeing mind. This is how we did it. And furthermore, not only that, everybody can do it because your own nature is absolutely full and pure and free. It was never bound. It is something that is there, always there. In fact, always doesn't apply to it because there's no time in it, there's no space in it. But look how subtle that is. Imagine a world with no time, no space. You remove all change and you remove all objects. Can't even imagine such a thing. So you have to put in imagination. Meditation is taking the imagination, the gestalt, the right-sided brain, and using it productively so that it becomes a pleasing avenue of self-discovery. So the scriptures that tell us this is called Upanishad. That is also called Vedanta. Literally the end of the Vedas. Now these Vedas deal with every aspect of life. And so we can take the Vedas in a twofold way. The first way will be what we call Karma Kanda, the portion dedicated to ritualism, activities, and so on, normal working, waking life, and how to maximize it, how to get the best from it. And from that, we understand that four aims of life are there. One is to live as a good, harmonizing individual, a human, and that you require a harmonizing attitude toward life. So your aim will be dharma, the thing that holds everything nicely together, an understanding of that. Second aim of life will be artha, making sure that you not only survive, but making sure that your living conditions is very satisfactory. Swami Vivekananda said, you see, all this higher knowledge, all this spirituality is not for people on two ends of the extremes. It's not for people ultimately, absolutely, desperately impoverished and hungry, because their concentration and concerns in life will be on food. And the other end of it will be such wealth that you are addicted to it and obsessed with materialism, and then you can't think of anything else. It's for the middle classes, those people who have no extremes. These are the people most suitable to go along this aspect of this discovery. So this karma kanda has to be there, and that engages dharma, it engages wealth creation, artha as an aim, and also fulfilling legitimate desires, kama, uh, which is fulfilling desires. But the fourth aim, this is all under karma kanda. The fourth aim is moksha, freedom. Because with all of this experience, that may lead you to a point of an inquiry, I want my freedom now. I experience all the other things, and I still have some pain in my life. People still don't like me. I still have reactions. I still have people scandalizing against me. I still have relatives that hate me. I still have I wish I had a little bit more money. All of these things. All of these things are actually ways of leading you to a better condition. And if our nature is perfect, nature itself will lead us toward this, and it is doing it. We're all on this pilgrimage journey of discovery called Vedanta, and we may largely not know it. Some know it, some do not. The whole of life, according to this Vedanta philosophy, is moving toward its own central revelation and purpose. Every atom is moving toward it. Why else would this world exist, according to the Vedanta? So, the third aspect is that this is all apparitional, it is all mithya, as it's called, and we have to discover it. And that is the fourth aim of our life, to get ultimately moksha. Moksha is a wonderfully technical term. It means you may be enjoying life. You may dedicate your life to your children and your career and all the rest of it, but you don't have much freedom. And pain comes when you feel, I don't have the freedom. And all of us are struggling for it, and it expresses it. In society, it expresses it. Oh, you're not free. Well, why? What do you mean? What is the punishment for antisocial behavior? Restrict your freedom, put you in the jail. So we're all looking for freedom in different avenues of our life. Understanding this as a central purpose, the fourth aim of life is moksha. And this Vedanta philosophy, with its practical implementation of how to understand the central truth, that is called yoga. And so truth is a relative kind. We can call that karma kanda. The higher truth is contained in the Upanishads, that portion of the Vedas dedicated to that. And that is not only at the end, as it were, of the texts, tagged on, as it were, but it's also the final conclusion of the texts. It's also the highest conclusion of the texts. So that in the Mundaka Upanishad, the truth is divided into two sections. The relative section, which is called Aparavidya, lower truth, and Paravidya, higher truth. Now, where does religion fall into this? It falls into the level of Aparavidya, lower truth. Imagine, not higher truth. Because higher truth will be now the real internal investigation, the real realization of that thing which is permanent, which never changes, that realization of the absolute truth. So Vedanta is dedicated to the final aim of the whole purpose of life. Then that will be a truth that doesn't go anywhere, that is eternal truth. It doesn't have any movement in it. It doesn't have any change in it. There's no pain in it. It is all of a steady kind. It is not Jagat. But how do you explain this Jagat? Jagat is the manifested expression of it, a kind of cosmic dream that happens, which we cannot explain. It's inscrutable. And so the first portion of how do we understand this world is called science. Science is an investigation, skio from to know also, and skio means I want to know what this world is all about. And the ancient rishis were scientists. They went through that. They didn't find the answers there. And science will not find the answers there. And whatever they find will shift and change because the interpretation of what they find will change with new data coming in. For example, in the 20th century, in the last part of the 1900s, there was a Nobel Prize given to three people, three scientists, and that was for their discovery that this universe is actually accelerating in its expansion. And everybody was puzzled. Now, a new immense revolutionary component to the cosmos has to be added because you have to have a driving force for it that wasn't there in the beginning. And we call this dark energy. But this data has now been released from 2014, 2017, I think, certainly in the 21st century, and with new updated equipment, peering deeper into the universe, and taking away some axiomatic presumptions and assumptions, and therefore removing critical error bars. In other words, not adjusting the data to a prefixed axiomatic position. They've discovered actually, well, the likelihood of this acceleration is not there anymore. And that means that a whole section of modern scientific understanding of the universe has to be removed. And we've seen this throughout history. So science is a shifting, changing thing, investigating something because this world is what is technically called Maya. The thing that you can measure is also within this changing phenomena of Jagat. And this Maya doesn't give us any certainty. It gives us a world of probabilities. And therefore, the Vedantic texts will say, this Maya, this world, is inscrutable. You will never know exactly what it is because it's an appearance. And appearance shifts and changes. It's like a shifting, changing kaleidoscope that will change as things shift around. And so every new discovery will result in a further inquiry, and so it will go on. But these ancient rishis went along that same line, and they found that this world neither is existent nor non-existent. It's inscrutable. You can't really find out what it is because it's a shifting, changing landscape. Let us look within. And when we look within, we find increasing subtle areas which become more expansive, more truthful, more general, until we come to an absolute position. And then your inquiry has stopped because you can go no further than this. It's an absolute position, briefly described with three words, that it is existence itself, pure being, existence itself, that it is consciousness itself, not objective consciousness, that's a product of it, it's consciousness itself, and that it is bliss itself. When you come to know it, you become supremely blissful, all your pain gets removed, and it's only pure joy that is there. So that's worthwhile pursuing, no doubt. Now, what makes Vedanta then a specialized area? What makes a specialized area is If it is absolute truth, it must be universal. Everybody, whether it's 1,000 years ago or 1,000 years hence, whether a person is a Christian or a Buddhist, a Hindu or a Muslim, that truth and the discovery of it must be absolutely the same. There can be no variation in it. And therefore, it is verifiable by anybody who goes according to the system. And therefore, every religion, every inquiry along this line, which we even call spiritual pursuit, every one of these uh, every one of these pursuers, every one of these devotees, every one of these pilgrims will come to the same conclusion, experiential conclusion, just as different rays of the sun representing different paths will all merge in the same sun, just as all rivers will flow into the sea, just as everything that is water in the ocean is in the form either of waves or at depth is the ocean, but the sum totality is always the same. You can't have any differentiation in it. And it is this oneness that everybody's looking for, not only in the material world, but in every avenue of inquiry. And when we come to this depth, this deep, deep ocean of truth, it becomes the same everywhere. There's no such thing as a Catholic church, a Catholic truth, a Protestant truth, a Muslim truth, a Sufi truth, a Hindu truth. No, it is all this oneness. Now, what is the practical benefit of this Vedanta? Well, firstly, why don't you get your freedom? Why don't you get this? This is the highest pursuit of man. It's worthwhile telling people about it. That's why we have Vedanta societies. Secondly, it produces a non-controversial universality of experience. And why do people fight? Why do people disagree? It's because they're seeing all the differences. They're not registering the unity. And that is so on every scale. When you take on a national identity and say, I'm a Zimbabwean and you're Irish, or I'm French, and you're British, and take on this nationality, of course, there's a forgetfulness. We're all human. And the anthropologists will actually bring us back to Africa. So we're all human. And everybody understands us today involved in peace movements. Yes, it's the differences that are destroying us. Let us accept the differences, but underneath it, we can accept as a commonality of experience called humanity. Now you go one step further. There's a commonality that we have, a commonality of mental experiences. Idealism is there. There is one series of mental movements that we all experience, and we cannot see it, we cannot touch it, we cannot prove it. It's all subjective. But this comparison there, we understand. There's a unity there. And when we talk about physical energy, there's a unity there. Everything can be resolved back to one thing. And when we go even further, we see only one spirit is there, and that's all there is. Everything is spirit. There's no world separate from spirit. Spirit is all that exists. Why don't we see it like that? It's because it's shrouded with ignorance. What is the antidote? We promote knowledge. Where is this knowledge to be found? It is to be found from the experience of others called rishis, and this is called Vedanta. And so Vedanta is a philosophy applicable to every single religion and every single human being. It is to do with your own fundamental nature. Discovery of this is the ultimate discovery. Discovery of man in depth is the ultimate discovery. And this is Vedanta. So Vedanta is the only way. There's no other way other than Vedanta. Because Vedanta is not divisive. It is not sectarian. It is the undercurrent. It is the substantial basis for every single expression, for every single human being, for every single aspect of life, for every religion. We will stop our religious quarrels when we discover this inmost truth that is called Vedanta. So in summary, that is Vedanta. The Vedanta, as it is applied to the text that espouses, called Upanishads, derived from Upanishad, indicating sitting near a teacher, sitting near somebody who knows this, and listening, and then evaluating, and then meditating on it. There are originally supposed to be probably 108 Upanishads, but we take a few of them. We take at least 12 of them in a serious way as ancient parts of the Vedas. The Vedas have several parts in them. So one is called the Samhita portion that describes a series of mantras that evoke a feeling of wonder, adoration, and thankfulness in the whole universe, registered as different forces operating. These also contain a kind of physics and cosmology, if we read it correctly. That is also part of the discovery of the rishis. Then you have that section called the Brahmanas. That means, okay, let us now take these ritualistic portions and apply them, systematize them. And then the Aranyakas, that is, let us explain what these rituals mean. And then, of course, there are the Upanishads. And the Upanishads could be part of the Brahmanas, could be part of the Aranyakas. Aranyaka, forest dwellers. And these are there because 4 ashramas or stages in life are identified. First 25 years of your life is an ashrama that is called brahmacharya, that is studentship, going from household learning from your parents up to tertiary education, learning many, many things, useful things, including the Vedas. The Vedas contained all the knowledge in the ancient days, but mainly teaching you good citizenship, how to be a good person operating in society, somebody who is useful to society, somebody who carries the discipline of the educational system into practical life. What life would be that? Household life. Household life, you spend your next 25 years engaging more than likely in wealth creation that gives you your artha. And then, having done that and contributed usefully to society, all your skills and talents, you then go vanaprastya into the forest, and in the vana, in the forest, you then start teaching others or start fulfilling all the, you can say it's a stage of kind of semi-retirement where you are fulfilling all your legitimate desires there. And then, having completed that portion, the next portion is sannyas, where you now seek seriously moksha. That was the social system. So the Samhitas was to teach you dharma as a student. The Brahmanas was to teach you rituals that will, in fact, give you the wealth that you require and the success that you require. And then we have the Aranyakas that deals with fulfilling any other thing which is there. And then you have the Upanishads, which ultimately fulfill this movement toward moksha or freedom. Now, if you calculate it all, it's a 100-year lifespan. But nobody, or I don't know, some people live to 100 years or so. Yogis will be able to live way beyond that. So, what to do? Well, within this whole system is a central idea about this changing existence, and it is called determinism or causation, otherwise called karma. Every action, including thought, will have its equal equivalent effect. And the effect will be the environment that we create, and the fact that a human body is a result of this forward momentum of desire, then this is where we are with it. And it doesn't stop. When the body goes off, it continues and continues to centralize a body, select some parents, and so on. So some people call this reincarnation. I don't like the term. Transmigration is a much better term because nothing really reincarnates. Neither material reincarnates, it reincarnates to in a certain sense, yes, just as all the cells of the body reincarnate every seven years. But the central person never comes, never goes. This Atman remains true. It remains the self. It remains permanent. It doesn't come, it doesn't go. It doesn't go anywhere. It's not subject to change. It's not subject to restriction of space, nothing like this. And it has no causation within it. So it doesn't go anywhere. To ask what happens when you die is a meaningless question from Vedanta's point of view. So you can, if you, supposing you don't make your 100 years, supposing you live up to the age of 75 and you're about to enter into the sannyasa, supposing you follow all these things, then you are born with a desire to pick that up again, to pick up the ball and run with it. Now, Vedanta has been unfortunately applied exclusively very often to the highest conclusion that it makes, namely that there is only one existence, and this is not called monism because one implies two, three, four, five. It is called non-dualism. That is Advaita, non-dualism. That is, nothing else exists except this one entity, which we call Brahman. So there are other positions within it. There is a Dvaita position, dualistic position, a much more natural position. A much more natural position suggests that I am here and whatever is to be discovered is elsewhere, and we can unite the two. This can either be with a theistic outlook. I am here, I'm a creature of God, and God is there, and God is a creator and the explanation for everything. And by being loving and devoted to Him and keeping these laws, then I can close this gap and get an intimate relationship with that person and live in Vaikuntha or heaven or anywhere else along with the object of my love and devotion, namely God. That's one position. Another position can be, I don't quite see that. We can call this panentheism. En means in. That means that I see everywhere. I don't see the separation. What we call God, I see everywhere. I see it in a tree. I see it even in a stone, in a river, in a person, in speech, in digestion, in the clouds, in the sun, in the moon. I see it in everywhere I look, I see it. I can't see that there's anything separate. I can see that that one being expressed itself and manifested itself everywhere. And the possibility of transcendence is also there. And this is also, some philosophers such as Spinoza had this idea. And we also see that Einstein also was a great fan of Spinoza, and he saw this active, integral entity that is the universe as one with that thing that we call, that the dualists will call God, and also beyond it as well, when all this immanence and transcendence. And many, you might say most practical Vedantists will fall into this category, and this is called Vishishtadvaita, or qualified non-dualism. But absolute non-dualism is also there, which says all of this is an apparitional existence. It is all just changing. You can't fix anything. Something appears, something disappears, something changes, something transforms into something else. It's a shifting landscape everywhere. There's no permanence for it. When I discriminate properly, I find that there is neti, that reality is not this and not this and not this. Then I have to come to a conclusion. It is only one. Not only in principle, but it has to be my discovery. Does the dualist have a discovery? Yes. The dualist will have this discovery, this vision of a God. And then when that is perpetuated, this non-dual aspect automatically comes in because truth itself gets exposed. And what about the panentheist or the Vishishtadvaitin? Yes, they get the thrill of being in contact and connectedness with this God everywhere. get this internal shift upwards, this great, great feeling of internal bliss and rapture. And that then yields ultimately to a calmness of oneness. Only one entity is there. Now I catch it. So all of these roads are leading to experiential non-dualism. And it is a mistake to say Vedanta is exclusively this non-dualistic position. Now, this is the beauty. This is why we follow Neo-Vedanta. What does that mean? It means that we don't say that Advaita is Vedanta. We say Advaita is Vedanta. We say Vishishta Advaita is Vedanta. We say Dvaita is Vedanta. All of them are Vedanta. But these are simply progressive steps toward an experience of unity of existence. We don't deny anything or any part of it. This is why Swami Vivekananda says we don't go from error to truth, we go from truth to higher truth. And in the Upanishads, all these three positions are described, actually. But the emphasis is our highest conclusion. You want our highest conclusion? Our highest conclusion is it's all non-dual. And many commentators, many people who have a position in one of these three places will make commentaries on these Upanishads and commentaries on the collection of these Upanishads for our convenience called Bhagavad Gita. And they will interpret in three ways. And the systematization of these Upanishads will be what is called the Vedanta Sutras or Brahma Sutras. Vedanta Sutras to try and coordinate these ideas. But these three commentary positions will always be there. The position of dualism, qualified non-dualism, and absolute non-dualism. But these are not contradictory positions, says Vivekananda, says Ramakrishna. Ramakrishna, through his direct experience of everything, reconciling all positions, being a reformer of Hinduism in this regard, and Vivekananda also expressing it in a very systematic way, expressing his master's ideas of how Vedanta should really look, not just for all time, but specifically how it should look in this modern world as well. Because every era will have a different way of looking at things. Even during my own lifetime, how I looked at things or how we looked at things, we meaning my era, way back, let's say in the 1950s and odd, 50s, 60s, is definitely not how people look at things today. Are they right or wrong? We leave those moral judgments to you. It's best not to judge them at all, just to evaluate their worth and accept what you can and reject what you can't. But definitely, these approaches have to change. And this is built into a system, inherent system, a system of kalpas, cycles, and yugas, ages. But we have to be careful that yuga dharma and sanatana dharma, these are different things. One shifts and adapts, the other one is fixed. So what we call Vedanta is also called sanatana dharma. That is an eternal kind of situation or law. It never changes. It's always the same. Yuga dharma, on the other hand, will change and shift according to the propensities and shifting times and the various aspects of modernism that we find from age to age. Yuga is an age. So, for example, if a religion declares, let us have a kind of law system, legal system that was adopted, say, in the Middle Ages, then they're adopting a form of Yuga Dharma not appropriate for the age and ignoring that underneath it is Sanatana Dharma, an eternal law that never changes. It is this non-changing thing that we're looking for. Either consciously or unconsciously, we're always looking for it. What is the thing that is fixed, that gives us a sense of security? It never changes. It's always there, always present. Please tell us this. And the beauty is at the universality of it, because it doesn't say you have to be a special person. No, any person will do. One rishi having discovered it, everybody can make the same inquiry. With our advantage now, that we're building on the shoulders of giants. We're taking these rishis and saying, we value your experience. Please teach us. And modern teachers and teachers throughout the ages will also say, I can teach you. Okay. Let me sit near you, Upanishad, and learn from you. And let me not just learn from you, but let me get some directions, specific directions from you. So I hope I answered your question.
Yes, Swami. Yes, you gave a very great answer. Thank you very much. Very comprehensive. Thank you.
Now there is another question that arose during the week, and the questioner probably is not here, or maybe here, I don't know, but it's worth dealing with. And it's a question that could more easily have been dealt with in the Wednesday sessions for spiritual seekers. In this process of understanding, one key component is necessary, and we call this faith. We have to understand what that means. So, faith must be in a guru, a teacher, a competent teacher. Faith must be in scripture, that is the experience of other teachers. Faith must be in a supreme principle that religion can call God. And faith must be primarily in yourself. And when faith shakes, as it does from time to time, in other words, when doubt comes in, what will we do? Because we have to acknowledge that progress is not like a career path. Even a career path will have its ups and downs. It is not a linear progression. It will be generally in a one trending way, but there will be variations within it. So it's important, first of all, to have doubt in the first place. The opposite of faith will be doubt. It is important that we are not certain, because that's the way we start from. I'm not certain that this life will give me all the things I aspire it should give us. And I'm not sure if doctrine and dogma in religion gives me the answer. Let us take, for example, and I don't want to upset anybody's belief system. Well, not immediately anyway. You see, the largest proportion of humanity in the world are Christians. Statistically, that's so. About 2.5 billion people, something like that, proportionately. Another 1 billion, 1.2 billion will be Muslim. Probably more. Anyway, you get the idea. All right. So then, in this modern age, there has been increasing inquiry about validity of the foundation for the religions, namely scripture. So there is in this modern age a reason to possibly doubt the validity of scripture that would have been accepted 3, 4, 500 years ago without question. So that's one area of faith that could be knocked. Another area of faith could be faith in oneself, and that's a very fundamental doubt position. When you doubt yourself, when your whole self-confidence goes because you got knocks in life, or you thought that God was a supervisory power in the heavens, you prayed and your prayer didn't come to fruition, then what? Then you say, I don't believe in that God anymore. Or some tragedy happens in your life and you think God is responsible for everything. So I'm angry with God now because he didn't make any correction. There was an injustice I saw here, and God didn't come, break open the clouds, come down, and readjust things immediately. Of course, I'm making a caricature of it, but that's another area of doubt. I relied on something, it became unreliable for me, I doubted it, my faith is gone. And commensurate with this would be a faith in other things, a faith in material world, you see, or a faith in technology, or a faith in the compensatory pleasures of the world. When I feel depressed, maybe I go toward some area of pleasure that makes me forget the difficulty. There may be that aspect of it. There may be just a doubting nature which says I don't feel secure about anything, and I question everything, and my nature is to question, but I don't find any answers anywhere. So, for various reasons, or you might be on a spiritual journey, and all of a sudden, one of these things happens. What to do? That is behind a certain question that was asked during the week. And so, how do we reestablish this faith? And for our purposes, faith and trust become the same thing. How can we trust? Well, how can we trust ourselves? What do we mean by ourselves? Well, how can we trust our own unconscious behavior that when something goes wrong, we immediately dive off into our habitual compensatory path? How do we stop that? How do we maintain our faith in a teacher who may have given me some affection at one time, but another time ignores me somehow, or tries to teach me a lesson? I don't like the lesson. Or maybe my expectation is there for some kind of immediate revelation. This is the age of impatience. I asked for a vision, I asked for a revelation, I asked for perfection. I wanted to, in yogic language, I wanted to discover the Sahasrara lotus, the Sahasrara chakra, and and unfortunately I woke up this morning and it didn't happen, wasn't there. So let me try something else. Let me dig another well in Ramakrishna's language. Ramakrishna gives that example, to do with Ishta Devata actually. So if you dig a well in one place, there's another place, another place, another place, you won't find water. But if you had taken all your energy for all the wells and put it in one place, you would have discovered the water. So concentration, that's the key to that story. We have to regain concentration. The method of it is actually contained in Patanjali Yoga Sutras. A very foundation book, I think, for anybody is Raja Yoga. Raja Yoga contains the Patanjali Yoga Sutras. And it gives us, like a scientific presentation, what are the evidences of this lack of faith as expressed as grief, doubt, laziness. There are many, many symptoms of this. How do we reestablish something? And concentration is always the answer. You have to take this diversion, you have to reel it in a little bit, start afresh, and concentrate on one thing at a time. And in doing this concentration, in reestablishing this faith, you have to take a small pause. You have to count to the proverbial 10, 1, 2, 3, and so on and so forth. And then start again and reestablish your faith through careful observation and analysis. And it starts, if you lack faith in God, the answer is not to reestablish faith in God. The answer is to reestablish faith in yourself. And by self, I mean going back to the principles that we've just discussed of Vedanta and understanding my real nature is this immortal. My real nature is perfect, is full, is free. Water cannot wet it, in the language of Krishna. Fire cannot burn it. Wind cannot dry it. It is that. And how is it that we are able to confidently follow this formula? Because Arjun's lack of faith in the Bhagavad Gita there, his lack of faith was addressed in this way. Sri Krishna, the supreme psychologist, immediately says, okay, you think you're this, you think you have agency, you think you're the prophet-actor complex. No, you're not this. You're not Arjun, the individual. That is there, of course, yes. but actually look deeper, and there you'll find Atman. There you'll find the Supreme Self. And as I say, water will not wet it, fire will not burn it, and so on. It is there. It doesn't change. It doesn't go. Even the body may change, may go, like new clothes or old clothes. You can take off, you can put on, but you never, ever, ever change. And when you really understand that as a logical principle, and then assert it, you automatically, a faith in yourself gets restored. A faith in your environment gets restored because it's put into the context. And ultimately, all the other faiths start coming back. So Vedanta gives this remedy. When you lack faith, supposing you're a theist, oh, I lack faith in God now, all right, put God to one side, reestablish faith in yourself. And when you reestablish faith in yourself, then you can engage in the other aspects and modes of faith. So I hope I briefly understood that, answered that question, because when you understand that and you understand the general context of it, you'll see what came out as a competent teacher, that came out from this eternal, manifested as a resource for our development, that the country, era, everything that you're in, the circumstance you're in, is to drive you forward to that discovery as well. Everything is provided by seemingly a loving, providing, non-demanding entity. That is why we confidently say in the theistic language, God is love. Naturally, what other thing can it be? So these are just some thoughts in relation to that particular question. We'll leave it there. Our time is exceeded now. So Om Shanti Shanti Shanti. Peace, peace, peace be unto all.
Thank you, Swami. Thank you very much. Thank you.
Thank you, Swami.
Thank you, Swamiji.
Thank you, Swami.
Merci beaucoup, Swami.